Colorado is rolling out the press tour for the new Move Over law.
That's my hope, is that now everybody's going to be like, okay, I just need to move over.
But is the state going to hope, or are they actually going to enforce the law and write tickets? Colorado's economy falls behind the national trend for the first time in a very long time. We dig into the new mayor's suggestion box, ideas of what to change about Denver. And speaking of, a business that's been in the city for 93 years is closing.
You know, this was just our life. I've been around here forever.
Let's talk about change tonight on Next. We're hearing a lot of talk about Colorado's new Move Over law, and we were curious whether it's just that, talk, or whether law enforcement is really going to dedicate the resources to enforcing the new Move Over law, which doesn't just apply to emergency vehicles anymore. So let's bring in Steve Steger on this. Obviously, this is a time in which we're hearing law enforcement talk about how they don't have resources to maybe enforce everything that they used to. So are we looking at a PR campaign, or are they going to dedicate the manpower to actually get this done?
They say they're going to dedicate the manpower, but a good way to look back would be to look at the old Move Over law when it was just emergency vehicles and stationary tow trucks on the side of the road. The State Patrol wrote about 5,000 tickets since 2018 for not moving over for them. It's about 1,000 each year. CSP Master Trooper Gary Cutler says, sure, the reason you're seeing all this coverage of the Move Over law now is education. They want you to think that you're going to get caught whenever you're coming up on a car on the side of the road now. But he says catching people in the wrong is not as hard as it seems. Cutler says often an extra trooper will be staged nearby and one trooper can radio to the other. Or in the past, he'll spot someone driving too close when he's walking back to his car at the end of a call. Pretty easy to pull someone over then. Cutler says that when the Move Over law got meteor all of those years ago, he did see people start to change their habits. But since the pandemic, it's like we've all forgotten how the rules of the road and how to drive. So this is a helpful refresher. He says if the law doesn't convince you to move over, maybe some of the stories he's witnessed from drivers on the side of the road will.
There's a lot of people that I've helped when they've been on the side of the road. And they're, especially when they've been there for a long time and traffic's very heavy, sometimes they're almost in tears because they're like, the cars are coming by so close and so fast, I thought I was going to get hit.
So reminder, the law now is you move over for anyone, even a stalled car on the side of the road. If you can't get over safely, slow down to at least 20 below the speed limit or whatever speed feels safe. Sometimes 20 below the speed limit is too fast. Cutler says this often works a lot like Simon Says. So you've got one driver who will decide to move over, then everyone behind that driver gets the same idea. So if all of this increased attention on this law gets just anyone to move over, chances are a lot more people will take that cue. Just because people follow people. He says truck drivers, semi-truck drivers are some of the best on the road because they always get over. And you'll see cars behind a semi.
Yep.
Oh, I better move over. Even if I'm going to be slow behind the semi, it's better to be over.
That herd mentality when you're driving, though, is definitely a thing, because all of a sudden you realize you're the only person not doing something. You're like, oh, that's a choice. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Same thing with zipper merging. I always think about that too. Like
one day we're going to dedicate this entire show to zipper merging and why it would save all of us so much hassle.
It's so effective.
Amazing. Thank you, Steve. Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named Paul, who wants to know if Coloradans could save money if the state only required a rear license plate, like some other states, instead of front and back plates. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Paul. So Colorado is one of 29 states that require front and back license plates. The DMV told us they have not studied the cost savings that could accrue to drivers if we went to just a single plate. We do know that going to a single license plate could cost governments that collect toll money. A study out of Texas A&M looked at E470 and estimated that toll revenue there would drop by about a third if they couldn't scan for the front license plate along with the rear plate. For more than a decade, Colorado's economy has been healthier than the American economy as a whole. Not lately. CU Boulder researchers say that Colorado's economic growth has been slowing since late last year. Still growing, just more slowly. The people behind the study say a shortage of workers is part of the reason that job growth is not as solid these days. Other economic indicators, like the state's GDP and consumer spending, are still increasing, but their trajectory is also slowing. The researchers tracking these trends quarter by quarter, year after year, say it is the first time in recent history that Colorado's growth has been behind the national average.
Coming out of the Great Recession in 2009 or so is when Colorado really started to break away from the US when it came to overall economic growth. What we have noticed over the last several months is Colorado's economy has begun to slow compared to the nation overall. So instead of being a leading economy, we have started to show signs of being a lagging economy.
Inflation is also causing an economic slowdown here. The economists, for the purposes of their study, grouped together as the Denver metro area Denver, Aurora, and Lakewood. And they say there you'll find some of the highest inflation in the country, but it is declining here. As Denver Mayor Mike Johnston prepared to take office, he put out what was essentially a giant suggestion box, collecting input from city employees and residents on what he should do. Suggestions range from buying the Park Hill Golf Course to overhauling the backed-up permitting department to another suggestion that our Marshall Zellinger found could really change downtown.
Based on the feedback from Denver Mayor Mike Johnston's transition committees, he has quite the lengthy to-do list in the first 100 days, which is by October 25th. Some of that to-do list is conflicting. For instance, the memo from Denver's economic development team had a recommendation to enhance downtown vibrancy by having city workers work from the office, and also to encourage state workers to work from downtown offices too. While the memo based on city employee feedback said remote hybrid work was their #1 issue and was seen as an equity and economic issue.
We know the economic value of having people back in the office in our center city.
Courtney Garrett is one of the transition team's co-chairs and head of the Downtown Denver Partnership.
We also know we need to recognize the psychological trends and incorporate that kind of flexibility so that we can solve for equity and fairness issues.
There is no answer yet on where city employees are expected to work from, but the job postings for the mayor's department heads listed those as in-person jobs. The transition team also made recommendations for safer streets, focusing on decentering cars and focusing more on transit, bikes, and pedestrians. For example, making Wine Coop in front of Union Station pedestrian only. Other tips include adding more speed cameras and banning turns on red. A recommendation for the city attorney's office is to consider enforcing the city's agreement to keep Park Hill Golf Course a golf course, or figure out how much it would cost to buy the property. And there was a suggestion to consider the position of night mayor. Not nightmare, night mayor. Someone focused on the needs of Denver workers who do not have traditional work hours.
It's more than just thinking about safety of bars and restaurants. It's thinking about providing services, childcare services for hospitality workers. Where do these people park in safe areas? What things that apply to the traditional 8 to 5 business world are also true and we need to key in on in the late night and evening hours.
Night mayor reminds me of that 30 Rock episode about rural juror. Another tidbit from the transition memos. DIA wants to work with RTD about more frequent buses and trains and expanding when they operate, mainly for DIA workers to have a reliable way to get to work. Now, Kyle, RTD is not under the purview of the city, so it will be interesting to see how this recommendation plays with an agency that has issues with the current frequency and operation of what they currently have. And here DIA is like, we need a little bit more.
Let me throw out an idea to you, okay? So 12 years under one mayor, there are going to be people who want a lot of different changes. Because Johnston has made such an enormous promise on homelessness, promising something no city's been able to accomplish, it kind of feels like if he tries to bite off some of these other big projects and doesn't hit the mark on homelessness, people are going to say he tried to do too much at once.
True. And I will say the thing I started with about work in-person jobs. If you get the ratio of people coming downtown, more people going to businesses, there was a part of the memo that talked about you get that ratio of regular people downtown higher than the people who are living on the streets, it starts a cycle and snowball that gets you closer perhaps to getting some of those people on the streets into homes, and you get more people downtown and you don't see what you see now.
That idea of vibrancy downtown is absolutely connected to a lot of his housing and homelessness policy. All right, Marshall, thank you very much. Each year, a group of young people get the chance to tell the Colorado legislature what to do. Now, it's up to the elected officials on whether they actually do it, but this youth council proposes bills that it wants considered. And this year, some of what they're calling for are more protections for trans kids. Draft proposals were presented to state legislators this week. 2 of the 6 proposals focus on trans youth. One would provide funding to train more health care providers in gender-affirming care, like puberty blockers and hormone therapy. The other would allow teenagers to submit their preferred names to public schools without having to go through a whole legal name change process. The students also proposed a study on gun violence prevention in schools, as well as recruitment programs for more school psychologists, and they're calling for expanded Asian American history education in public schools. Later this year, the Youth Council is going to work with legislative staff to draft up some actual bills. 3 of those will go to the state legislature for consideration. So big-time college coaches are required to report how much money they make on the side. It's supposed to prevent bribes and shady business. Well, it turns out that CU football coach Deion Sanders will be on sort of an honor system. A media outlet called Sportico was first to stumble upon the special clause in Coach Prime's contract. So most schools keep written records of where their coaches make outside income, stuff like endorsement deals and promo compensation. The NCAA passed that rule in 2018 following a bribery scandal in college basketball. But according to the letter of Sanders' contract with CU, he will be able to provide a, quote, detailed verbal accounting of his outside income each year, which is probably no joke. Don't begrudge him a cent of it. A CU spokesperson told us today the NCAA doesn't require reports to be in writing, so CU's deal with Prime, why don't you just tell us how much outside money you made, is apparently perfectly legal.
It's just a chance for somebody else to step up and have a good career.
For more than 90 years, business was good. Not anymore. So they're closing up shop. Denver's e-bike rebates go fast. Now the state is going to offer them in every corner of Colorado. That's next. Denver's e-bike rebate program's been wildly popular. Limited number are made available regularly, and they are snatched up in minutes. Now the state's getting in on the e-bike rebate game, giving out vouchers of their own starting this month. Unlike Denver's Everybody Qualifies program, this one is going to be targeted specifically for people earning a low to moderate income. Online applications for the state's new e-bike rebate program will open next Wednesday, the 16th. Randomly selected applicants will get rebates of up to $1,100 with additional discounts for cargo bikes and bike accessories. The goal is the same, local and state, is to cut down on emissions from cars. 2020 study of Denver's e-bike program estimated the bikes eliminated nearly 1,500 tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year and replaced more than 4 million miles driven in vehicles. Danielle Grant, Steve Steger has been trying to talk me into this e-bike thing for the longest time. He's great with his. I mean, he will commute to work on his. Usually when I'm on the bike, often the kids are in the buggy behind me, and like I'm looking for the exercise as opposed to the assist.
I mean, I'm just surprised that he rides in all the way from the suburbs, too.
Oh,
that's Steve Steger.
Suburban Steve trucks it in from the suburbs on that e-bike of his.
Yeah, he does. He's doing his part. I love it. And so many folks doing their part, too. A day like today, though, in the 90s, I don't know, not for me. It was hot out there. We have not seen a 90-degree day in 9 days. We've been looking at below average temperatures, but today marks day 18 in the 90s, which actually is quite low in comparison to the past couple of years. We were close to triple digits around Lamar and Springfield, 70s, 80s up in the mountains, and about 94 in Grand Junction. You can certainly see the scattered showers and thunderstorms rumbling up in the high country. They've been pretty numerous, especially around I-70. Here in the metro area, saw a couple of quick sprinkles, some gusty winds. That really has been about it, with a few storms brewing off to the eastern plains. By about 11 o'clock tonight, everything clears out. And tomorrow morning, it's Friday, it's 7 a.m. We're looking at some sunshine and the weekend on the way. By the afternoon, the clouds will start to stream in. Once again, those storms hitting the high country first, but by about 2:30, 3 o'clock here in town, wouldn't be surprised if once again you see some gusty winds out there, a couple of sprinkles, a nice little car wash, and then these storms are going to be long gone. The heat back with us tomorrow. We'll return to the lower 90s here for the metro area. Pretty toasty out east with 60s and 70s through the mountains. Look at this 7-day forecast for you. It'll feel like summer for the first half of the weekend. Cold front slides through. A good chance for storms on Sunday and a high of just 80 degrees. We gradually climb out of the 80s and back to the 90s we go by the middle of next week.
In reality, we never really ran this business to make money.
But they made enough of it to make a go of it for almost 100 years, until now. City of Glendale is known as a libertarian's paradise, all about everybody doing their own thing. Until it came to pickleball. That's next. We have a breaking update tonight on the war on... We have a Fox Newsier version of this. Can we play the even more Fox Newsy version of the war on pickleball graphic, please? There it is, baby. The war on pickleball continues. Another assault on your God-given right to make a racket with a racket. This time from the libertarian paradise of Glendale. Apparently, live and let live only goes so far when pickleballers take over the local tennis courts. Glendale City Council is considering a new rule that would separate the pickleballers from the tennis players, force them both onto courts of their own. This new city ordinance would make it illegal to tamper with local tennis courts. Basically, that means you can't come in and put pickleball lines on the tennis courts and play that game instead. Can't bring in your own net and such. Glendale's in the process of adding 4 pickleball courts to Glendale Park. They said they want to keep them separate from the tennis courts. Pickleballers who want to make some noise over the new ordinance will have their chance to public hearing next month as the war on pickleball continues. If you live in Denver and you've got some musical talent, there is a good chance that you have stopped by Kalasny Music on South Broadway. For almost a century, that family business has provided instruments to musicians and schools with their motto, better to make a friend than a dollar. Well, after all this time, the dollars have run dry and the store's closing soon. For the shop's owner, the friendships and the memories will continue.
The music industry has always been a big mom and pop driven industry. It's changing now because we're all aging out, but definitely that was what it was. This is the last consignment harp. This is the last harp for sale here. My name's David Kalasny. I run a music store on South Broadway, Kalasny Music, which has been in business since 1930. So my grandfather and grandmother ran it, and then my dad ran it, and then me and my wife and my sister are running it now. We'd always thought it'd be nice to make it to 100 years, but there's some certain satisfaction in making 93. We're in the process of selling the building and closing out the store. In reality, we never really ran this business to make money. They always said about my grandfather that he'd rather make a friend than a dollar, and we've tried to live up to that. It was always, at the end of the month, we were just happy if all the bills were paid. There was never any slush fund. And then the COVID came, and we got in kind of a deep hole. You know, this was just our life, and I've been around here forever. The people that have come through, and the famous people or well-known people, or just great musicians in the area, they were all just friends. I figure I'll feel sad later. I've got too much to do to be sad now. I can't be paralyzed with sadness. I've got to keep this thing winding down. It's just a chance for somebody else to step up and have a good career.
Kalasny Music will close at the end of September, but if you're in need of a harp, David says he will keep his harp rental and repair business going from home. Feedback tonight includes a comment about my disgusting face. Marissa with the feedback assist. Next. Tom Fitch writes in tonight talking about the idea of Colorado requiring front and rear license plates with an interesting point. He says, if you've ever watched dash cam videos on YouTube, you'll see what incredible value the front plate has if there's ever an accident. That is a very interesting point, Tom, and not one that I would have immediately thought of. A ton of you writing in about the idea of Colorado's move over law now expanding to any vehicle stopped on the side of the road and not just emergency vehicles. Lee says, what about tourists stopping for a photo opportunity? Are the emergency flashers the defining line? Not anymore, Lee. It is a stopped vehicle on the side of the road that people are supposed to move over for. Barbara says high speeds make moving over very dangerous, especially because people in the right lane are usually going slower. Absolutely, Barbara. We're talking about competing dangers. There's the danger to folks moving over, danger to folks on the side of the road. And then this from Carrie. You haven't tuned in for a few weeks. The beard is back. Hooray. And Kathleen. Sorry, Kyle. Your hairy face is disgusting.